All right, everybody, it's almost agreement time. Still trying to recover from spring break and all that madness and get back into the interview mode. And so I've got Sarah Keith with me. She's running for a judge. I forgot which one. We'll talk about that in a second. But we're almost in agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can go to our website, almostinagreement.com. That's where all the cool stuff's at. My county election. My election guide 22 for county stuff. It's got everybody by what seat they're running for. Links to their websites if I have one, and then links to a show if I have one with them as well as links to KGIS and Knox County Election Commission, so you can double check your registration status, where your polling location is, what districts you're in, because those moved around this year and that kind of stuff as well. And so we got a judge, and we'll probably talk more about what the job is than what the election process is. But I'm curious, and I'm really confused because I think last time we talked about judges, I couldn't figure out why we vote for them in the first place. So we'll figure that out while we're doing this. Check out the Compass podcast. We just started Compass Points on all your major podcast providers, YouTube, and or go to CompassKnox.com and you can subscribe to stuff there. We're almost in agreement. We're going to do a show. So here we go. All right. Sarah Keith is running for judge. Which one?
Division 1, General Sessions Court.
Okay. So the only other judge I've had so far was Dino, who's Counselor 2, or Chancery 2, excuse me. And this, like I said, this is where I get confused on the whole thing. I don't know what to vote for in a judge. I don't know what makes a good judge. I got a copy. Mr. Lutton from the Defender's Office sent me a copy of the Bar Association's survey thing, which I guess is useful, but at the same time, it's kind of selfish for them. You filled it out in the past, I'm sure, right?
Oh yes.
So let's start with let's start from the beginning per se. As how did we get here? So where'd you grow up? That kind of stuff. Any education stuff you want to share? What you've been doing before the politics election process started, and then we'll go into that part.
Okay, sounds good. I'm from Scott County, Tennessee, originally. For people who are not from this area, that's about an hour north. Went to Scott County Public Schools. When I graduated high school, I went to Tennessee Tech University. Got a bachelor's in political science, minors in history and psychology. When I finished that up, I came to Knoxville to go to the University of Tennessee College of Law, where I got my JD with a concentration in advocacy and dispute resolution. After that, I started working in Bradley and Polk County in the 10th Judicial District as an assistant district attorney. And 1 year of doing that, got a call from the DA's office here where I'd clerked when I was in law school, and they had an open position. So in 2007, I moved back to Knoxville and have lived there here ever since. So I prosecuted for the state of Tennessee for about 15 years, doing DUIs, vehicular homicides, career gang offenders, child abuse unit, was the team leader there for a while, and also just general prosecution cases as they came in.
Whatever Sharm drops on your desk is basically...
Pretty much.
Okay.
And so after that, I've been doing solo practice for myself, Law Office of Sarah Keith.
Okay, so you've left the DA's office?
Yes.
Now, when did that happen?
As of January 1st.
Okay, because there's some procedure stuff that I remember kind of came up in conversation that I didn't quite understand that I wasn't going to take the chance to talk to you because you were high on the list for the appointment replacement of the judge that you are now seeking election for. Is that, did I hear that story correctly? Is that there's a judge retired early?
Yes.
And that is the seat you're seeking now, but in the appointment process from commission, you were in discussion there as well.
I was in discussion for that. I had initially announced that was a Division 2 spot, and they ended up appointing someone who had been my coworker, Judd Davis.
Right, because that was one of the technicalities that that I'd heard about it that I'm curious about, because the DA's office has a rule about seeking office. Basically, if you can run for anything you want to as long as it's an open position. If there's an incumbent, you cannot remain in the DA's office and run against an incumbent. And so at the point where there's another appointment, then that person became the incumbent. And I'm now, I had to run against an incumbent anyway. I went against. So the short version is you had to quit your job to do what you wanted to seek this judgeship, which, I mean, eventually if you get elected would be the thing. And so I don't know, like I could see that kind of being kind of weird, just in the sense of, like, what if you don't get elected and now you quit your job, but you're practicing privately anyway, so it's not that big a deal for you. Again, like, it's one of those, like, I heard it and I was trying to figure out exactly what was happening with that, because it was a confusing little thing. Again, for me, I don't understand, like, if you had a chance to listen to the Dino episode, like, most of the episode was like, he helped me break down what courts do what, which is helpful. But like, I don't understand how we as the public are expected to make a decision on this. I don't know what makes a good judge. Again, like I made the reference, I've looked through the bar association survey or whatever, and I can appreciate that, you know, the lawyers who have to deal with the judges on a regular basis have an understanding, and their insight on it is useful. But at the same time, it's kind of self-serving. It's well, I'm buddies with that guy. He can give me, I won't say better rulings, but maybe give me a little more leeway on certain topics that maybe he wouldn't give, or maybe one of the other guys wouldn't give me because I've had fights with him in the past, that kind of stuff. And so, yes, I get that the bar exam's a good setup, but like, how do we help me as just a regular person who thankfully hasn't had a lot of time in court? Like, what are some of the factors that you feel are important for a judge that we can use as a reference when we're making that decision as the public?
Sure. I think that's always something that comes up is why should we be voting for judges?
I think we should.
And well, on the one hand, there are people who are in court regularly and have a better working knowledge of what's going on. On the other hand, it does supply a little bit of accountability to your community about it. So it's a real double-edged sword on that. Now, personally, I think I would be a good judge because I have very broad experience. I've done everything from misdemeanors up to major felonies, including murders, child rape, robberies, all kinds of things. I'm also getting quite a bit of civil experience in my current position. I think I have a great judicial temperament. I don't get too worked up about things. I can understand that reasonable minds can differ.
I mean, if you're not in jail for working a case with some child rape and stuff like that, and can keep a cool head over that kind of stuff, I could see what you mean by that, because that, I don't think I could keep a even keel on that, especially if, like, you know, going through evidence is there, everything, the proof is there, and you got to go through this process. I don't know if I could just be like, okay, here is the evidence, people. I would probably go to jail myself.
I think that's a pretty common sentiment about it. But of course, our Constitution is really important, and everyone is presumed innocent until they are proven guilty. And so any case that I've had on the prosecution side, it's not just my job to try to get a conviction on that. Every case has to be evaluated objectively to determine if it's something that should be prosecuted. And there are cases where I believed the person did it, but I did not believe that we would be able to prove that the person did it beyond a reasonable doubt. And so the ethical obligation in that position is not to proceed with the prosecution.
Right.
So I certainly had that experience of having to be objective on cases when, again, they're cases that are like child rape or something like that, where emotions are running very high. Obviously, you want anybody who's done something like that to be held accountable, but you also have to ensure constitutional protections for everybody. So there's always that balance of public safety and constitutional protections for everyone, equal justice under the law, and due process. And again, with the experience being in the trenches with some very emotionally charged and difficult cases, I've been able to navigate those and think I'm respected on both sides of the bar,
right.
Defense and prosecution, who know that I can be objective and understand if someone is advocating their position very passionately, that that's not personal, that is, their job to advocate zealously for their position and evaluate those positions objectively and make the decision that makes the most sense according to the law and what the facts of each case are.
Right. See, and again, this is where I go, I don't have any idea. Like, I get what you're saying. I understand that. Like, I get the premise of it, and I could see the importance of said factors. But how is any judge going to come in here and talk to me on a campaign show and not have some general sentiment of that idea? Like, is there, other than the Bar Association survey, like, is there, like, how does the general public get to know that kind of thing? Like, I get it as far as, there is cases you've won, or in cases you've worked in the DA's office, or now cases you've worked privately that have a record that are seeable there. But a lot of what you and Dino, for that matter, have described as good characteristics of a judge are interpersonals. That's not coming down on paper. Like, I can't look that up and get a list. It says, 9 times out of 10 when this crazy thing happens, she was cool as a cucumber and relaxed and whatever. Like, how do we as the public get to seek information out to actually understand that?
Some of that is going to be reputational, and that is going to be difficult to get. The Knoxville Bar Association, in addition to surveys and things like that, also has links on their page where you can get all kinds of biographical information about everyone who was running for the judiciary. And in addition to that, candidate interviews. Everyone had the same questions.
Oh, okay, cool.
And was able to
Cool. I wonder if that's
do some Zoom interviews and all that. So it's all linked on the Knoxville Bar Association
I wonder if that's
page.
public domain and I could use it on the show. I'll have to ask somebody.
Marsha Watson would be the person to to contact for that. She's
Because
the
that's,
executive director.
Again, that's one of the things I want to start adding into other shows and stuff like that, using some other media that's available. Because I do, like, I've tried to do a few things with like a commission meeting because that's public domain, obviously. I'm curious. Anyway, sorry, sidebar, that's what I do.
Generally, I think that they like to share that information
Right.
because they want it to be a public service to people.
And
Because that's pretty common that people don't know what the courts do or don't know the difference between a chancery and a general sessions.
Right.
So we want to get that information out.
Okay, so we jumped ahead on my standard kind of operating on an interview is that we got some of your personal and professional history, but what was there like a specific event or case or something like that or situation that made you want to make the jump from either the DA's office or private practice into the politics part of this game for a judge seat? Like, has it been a long-term target, or has this been, something happened and you said, hey, this is why I want to go over here?
Not like long term that was a career goal. I didn't come into it thinking, oh, I'm going to run for general sessions judge. But for the past several years, I've had several people ask me if I would be interested in running, because I do think I have a good reputation in the bar for being objective and evaluating cases in a very professional manner. And of course, I've been in the courts, done vertical prosecution, and handled cases, defense and prosecution from pre-arrest through, the end, through jury trial and post-conviction. And so seeing all parts of the judicial system, I think I would be good at it, and I think I have the proper temperament for it.
You couldn't come up with a good answer to say no to your friends that are saying you should. So that's what I'm hearing right now. It's like you should run for judge, and you're like, okay, I can't. I can't form an argument to say why I shouldn't, so I'm going to do it.
No, I'm just saying I'm not here because it's ambitious. Like, I want to be judge. Like, I need that title or anything like that. But I do think I would be good at it. And in humility, saying other people were encouraging me, and I agree with them. It's not a no, man. Might as well.
Let me say, like, there's definitely again, I referenced Dino because that's the only other judge judge candidate I've talked to so far, and he had mentioned that he would like to get into some appellate court or something like that, something that's an appointment from the governor further down the line, but he has to have a certain number of years as an elected judge for that to be an option for him. And so it's not necessarily a slight to say that you want to be a judge. It's just, it's always, I think it's interesting. It's a thing to talk about and or consider in some, because again, like, I think I don't understand the judge side of it as much as maybe, like a commissioner who wants to be a commissioner and then go into maybe a mayor or go to state level and stuff like that. There's more, at least there's a path that I could see for the more general elected positions, where this one's a little bit different because I don't get it. And it's not that there might be like a track record of history of you go back and you watch these judges move through the system, and it's kind of you practice here, you practice there, you get a judge, you get appointed over here, and then you get up, and that's how you work your way up. And I'm sure that's something of the nature. But again, I don't know those things, and I'm just exploring, trying to figure out a new avenue.
There are hierarchies of our judicial system: sessions court, then up to circuit and chancery court. Those are peer courts. After that, you get the Court of Criminal Appeals and the Court of Appeals, and then after that, the Supreme Court. So there are people who do have the ambition to serve on those courts. And again, that's certainly not a criticism of anyone who wants to serve. If I got called and asked to do an appointment, sure. But I'm running for sessions judge, not with the anticipation of this is a stepping stone to another court level.
Right.
Sessions is unique compared to a lot of other courts.
That was going to be my next question. Is like, so remind me, because I already forgot. Like, what are the normals for general sessions?
So let me say, I want to do sessions court because I feel like that can have the most direct impact on people.
Okay.
From a certain level, you're at arm's length. The higher up you get, the further away from really the people in the trenches you are. And sessions court is, you're right there. You're in the trenches. And so we have 5 sessions courts in Knox County. And you can kind of think of those 5 positions. There are 5 judges. more of at large. There's a division you run for, but every judge covers every court on a 5-week rotating basis. And so you have a civil sessions, misdemeanor sessions, DUI sessions, bonded arraignment and a cited court sessions, and a felony sessions. And so you'll spend 1 week in each of those courts and just rotate every 5 weeks.
Do felony cases get done within that week normally? Is that average?
Well,
or you start the case and
you start the case,
okay, whenever that
so
case is assigned, and then you go, okay, I get it.
And then felony court will be operating every day of every week. You'll just have a different judge from week to week. And so judges sometimes will keep something on their docket if they started it, and sometimes based on necessity, when officers or witnesses or anyone is available, they'll put it on another judge's docket for the sake of judicial economy or efficiency.
Okay, I'm trying to make sure I understand.
Clear as mud, isn't it?
Right. So if, let's say, hypothetically, I'm going to use my lawyer terms that I suck at. Hypothetically, I have been convicted, or not convicted, but I have been arrested on a murder charge. Mm-hmm. So felony murder. I'm a felony murder defendant, mm-hmm. and my first hearing is the week that you're in felony. Mm-hmm. So we do a hearing, whatever it is, some discovery conversation, whatever like that is, and then we have a future court date that's 2 weeks out for the next thing. When I come back, I'm going to have a different judge in front of me, or it's still going to be you because that case started with you, or maybe both, or either.
It could be either one. Generally, if it's just set out, say you have an initial court appearance, mm-hmm. arraignment or something, and it's set out 2 weeks to do the hearing, then it would be a different judge that you would be in front of that 2 weeks. However, sometimes if there's particular things about the case, and the judge is like, well, I've already heard some of the arguments about this, I'll just keep it on my docket. Mm-hmm. And so the judge may be sitting in misdemeanor court that week, and so the parties would just walk down to misdemeanor court and take the warrant and stay in front of that judge. But most of the time when they're setting it, it's just going to be whoever's presiding over the court that
whoever's
week.
In that room this week. Mm-hmm. The hearing or the part or whatever it is going to be in the felony room, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
And whichever judge is the one in that room will be who you see. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know. I'm not sure what I think about that.
You know, it works. It has like everything.
I could see it as
benefits and drawbacks.
Right. I could see it as a check and balance, in that if there is a particular judge in rotation that has a particular issue that gives them a bias on a certain case, that's a easy way for them to step out of it and move out of the way and let different judges kind of keep an eye on each other as well. So I'm gonna get it. Mm-hmm. I think I don't know. It's not how they do it on Law and Order, so I'm confused.
It takes a lot longer than it does on Law and Order.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, because I think like that would be the weird one. Probably the better hypothetical would have been to, like, we're actually in like the whatever the normal session of it is, where it's the prosecution's bringing witnesses in, and the police officer's there, the arresting officer's doing his thing, and that's weeks, sometimes weeks, depending on the case. Mm-hmm. That just prosecution's halfway through his thing, and then essentially the week changes, so we have a new judge all of a sudden, and then the prosecution continues their thing. That's the only thing that's like, it's just clicking kind of weird in my head.
Well, Sessions Court is also different than what you're probably used to seeing on Law and Order, because Knox County typically doesn't do trials in Sessions Court.
Okay.
You have preliminary hearings. You can do a bench trial for any misdemeanor in Sessions Court. And that's where you don't have a jury. The judge is who decides.
Okay, yeah.
And, of course, that is appealable to the circuit or criminal court. But most cases in Sessions Court are resolved either plea, or a person will waive it to grand jury, or there's a preliminary hearing. And that's just a probable cause hearing that says there's a crime that was committed and it was most likely this person who did it. It's a check, kind of as cases filter up through the system. If it's
okay, so this would be before you get into the... what court? I'm so confused now. So on my felony murder hypothetical, mm-hmm. like when we get into the actual brass tacks of it, that's a different court once we get through. So it'd be all prelim hearings through you.
You do preliminary hearing, and that's not going to be separated where you start it and then there's another judge. Preliminary hearings at most generally take a couple of hours. Right. Sometimes they're less than half an hour to do a prelim, and if the judge finds that there's probable
we're
cause,
arguing whether or not this video's, it's admissible. See, I know a few words.
So the judge, let's say the judge finds that there's probable cause that you committed this felony murder. The judge at that point would bind the case over to the grand jury. And at that point, the grand jury would get all the paperwork and everything.
Right. There's enough evidence there to support this charge, and then it goes to what?
The grand jury then reviews the charge, and they decide whether they think there's enough evidence or not. And then after that, it comes out into criminal court or circuit court, and that's where you have the jury trials.
All right,
that's where it takes
right.
even longer. So,
Right.
so you can't take a felony plea in general sessions court. So you can do a prelim, and the judge can decide there's probable cause,
Right.
or the person can waive it for various reasons. They don't want to do a preliminary hearing. They send it to grand jury, or they make an agreement with the state to plead. That's called a plea by information. So it still has to be taken into the criminal court level for a felony plea, because felonies, obviously, they're more serious offenses, and so they have to be pled in a court of record.
Right.
And general sessions is in a court of record. Again, it's kind of a filter. If you think of the court system like a pyramid, general sessions is here on the bottom. It is a catch-all. If you are going to be in court in Knox County, it is the most likely place that your charge
Right.
or
Unless
your
it's a
case is
traffic
going to
ticket, because then
originate.
you're going to city court.
If it's a traffic ticket in the city. If it's a traffic ticket in the county or by THP, you're
Right.
going to go to general sessions court, the bonded court and cited. So you have your general sessions, then you have your criminal and circuit court and chancery courts on the same level there, then your court of criminal appeals, court of civil appeals, and then your Tennessee State Supreme Court. So all of these things are filtering upward.
So as a campaign thing, she understands what the thing is. She understands the pyramid people, so that's more than me. So it's not a hard bar to beat. But
I think that's pretty common. Most people generally don't know what general sessions does unless they've been to general sessions.
Right.
So
I think I have. I don't know. I've got a little bit of a record. It's a long story, and it's more than I want to share on the show. But I mean, again, I think that's for the premise of the show that at least this section of the show that I've tried to do is I'm trying to understand not just who the candidates are, but what the job is, which that's pretty much most of what we've been talking about. Because I hear what you're saying 100% on the different things that you feel like makes you well qualified for the job, and I don't have the means to disagree with you anyway. But I get that there's a few jobs that are more confusing to me than the other that we vote for, and this is one of the ones I'm stuck on most because, like a clerk's office or the trustee or something like that. I think the lay person could probably get a general handling on what the job actually is because it's an admin job. Really, it's more running an office, not doing the job the office does per se. Like I had Sherry Witt on, I was talking to her about it. It's like, she knows how to hand out license plates, but realistically, most of it's trying to get personnel in place. When the state changes some law, she's got to figure it out and then figure out how to disseminate that onto the staff so that whatever the new thing is gets done. Where a judge is a job. Like this is, you're doing the actual job. You're not overseeing a dozen other judges because you're the boss of the judges. We're not electing the judge boss. We're electing the judge itself. And it's like we hire the district attorney general, but we don't hire all the ADAs. She gets to hire those, or whoever the current one is gets to hire those and fire those and do that because it's more of an admin job. Maybe I don't know, like at least on Law and Order every once in a while Fred Thompson was the district attorney a couple of times in there. Every once in a while he'd show up in court, but for the most part he was just managing lawyers. And so this is one of the part C of why I get confused on trying to understand this election cycle or this part of the election cycle. And then it's only every 8 years, so we have plenty of time to forget about it before we get to do it again. And I don't know, I'm curious how many people like how often do we get through a whole term with the judge? Is that normal? Like I feel like we get retirees or appointments and then somebody appointed somewhere else and then the commission is appointing a new one.
That's pretty common when someone is ready to retire, that they'll retire a little early. That seems to have been a pretty common practice here in Knox County.
It's a
but
politics mood 101. Yeah, I get that one.
But we've had a lot of judges who've been multiple term judges. Judge Jackson, Andy Jackson, Tony Stansberry, Jeff Emery had been for years, who was the one who had recently retired,
right.
and Patricia Long have all served over one term.
Right, but if I remember the list correctly, we only have one incumbent running. Well, two if you count judges, but he doesn't really count as an incumbent. To be fair,
everyone who is running for judge is an incumbent, except me at this point in general sessions.
In general session, okay. Okay, see, that's again. I don't know. I don't see, and again, like I feel weird because I don't know what to ask. I don't know what to talk about.
Yeah, so there are 16 elected judges in Knox County, and only 2 of those positions are contested this year. Everyone is up for election.
Right.
But the Chancery Court race and this
Right, and it's only
division-
2 in the Chancery Court race.
3.
Well, but it's only part 2.
Yes, only
1
only
and 3
part
are
2.
unopposed. Part 2 is, and that's the Dino one.
Yes.
And then yours.
Yes.
And then everybody else is running unopposed. See, I'm on a
Yes.
whole separate tirade. Okay, so here's a question for you: as you're when you were a district assistant to the district attorney, or potentially, so it is a Class C misdemeanor to pick up a primary for a party you're not affiliated with.
I just learned that recently. It's a statute I never looked at.
Right, and so that answers the question I was getting ready to ask: is if you've ever seen it in court or come through across your desk at any point.
No, I'd never seen that office
Because
or the previous office I was in prosecute anyone for that. That's not to say it's never happened, but I've never seen it.
So how does that work? Okay, so how does that work when it comes to, not particularly on this particular crime, but when you say never seen anybody prosecuted for that, or that's never, like, how much discretion does an ADA, or I guess the DA, have on trying a case? Like,
Well, the DA has complete discretion on whether or not to charge a case. They are the elected DA is the top law enforcement officer in their jurisdiction. So they could take a report for a case or have a warrant and decide, yes, we want to go forward on that, or no, we're going to choose to dismiss this or not to bring charges. And that is the sole discretion of the district attorney.
so regardless of what evidence is available and stuff like that? I mean, obviously it's a political move if they were to do something ridiculous, but like the public would have a field day if it was like egregious.
Certainly.
But at least legally speaking,
Yeah, legally
it's
speaking.
just I watched this dude murder somebody, and I'm not going to press charges because I can, theoretically.
Theoretically.
Okay. Again, I'm just like, one of the big things to me, and we've talked about it specifically on judges, but one of the big things to me is trying to understand the jobs. Like, I get in all sorts of tiffs with people fairly regularly about bringing school board into commission conversations, bringing schools, bringing schools into commissions races, commissioners running, or candidates for commissioners running on, I'm going to do whatever for schools. It's like, well, by the county charter, there's really nothing you can do. You just say okay to the budget they ask for or not. That's really all you can do. And so it's frustrating to me when people run on stuff that isn't within the purview. And so when I get a chance to explore things and
That
try
seems
to
very logical.
right, but it's common. The practice is common because the public doesn't know. And so one of the things I'm trying to build is on, like I was in the intro, I'm talking about the website. One of the things I'm trying to build on the website is a job descriptions page. Like, here are all the elected offices we have, and here's the actual job description, what they can and can't do in said office. And so when candidates are running and when they're talking about the things that they can or they want to do when they get elected and stuff like that, there's at least a starting point where a general person can go, well, that person is running and they keep talking about this thing, but it clearly states that that's not within the purview of their job title. Like, I mean, everybody likes to throw all the problems at schools at the mayor's feet. It's like Mayor Jacobs has nothing to do with the schools. He can talk about them, I guess, and he has the platform, and I hate that. So, like, platforming, like, they can use their platform for the good. And it's like, I get that. Yes, they can. But let's at least hold them to the job they do and talk about that. And then tell them to shut up when they're out of their, stay in your lane, for lack of a better word. It's like, make them stay in their lane, because it's not fair to us that they use that as rhetoric to get them elected again when that's not the job. I went on a long rant for no particular reason on that portion. I apologize. Okay, so
I won't talk about the schools then.
Okay, yeah. See, it was a warning shot for you. Is what it was. You're right. You got it. Because again, I think I think that's what's particularly difficult about this one is the couple of like sources I found that give decent job descriptions for some of these goes completely out of my understanding once we get into the legal team of it. And and like I've had Eric Lutton on a couple times in the public defender's office, and the really cool stuff that office does outside the scope of the job, which again, it's an admin job. He's doing things, he's not just trying cases, he's doing all other kind of stuff. And so that one's a little bit unique, but the legal side of it, I just don't understand. Like, I don't know. I fortunately have not had to deal a lot with the legal system, but I don't know. I don't know how to help people understand what we're voting on right now.
Well, and it's difficult for candidates too. And you, I'm sure, saw that with Dino and with me. We can't talk about issues individually.
Right. It's especially weird with the ethics you guys have. Yes.
So we have all of the regular campaign restrictions and rules that any candidate has.
With an extra financing one, I can't remember that one. Like, you can't directly ask for receive money.
can't directly ask or receive, but there's a recent Attorney General's opinion issued last month that draws out some exceptions for that, where money can be solicited and accepted, but it can't be done in any way that also violates or would tend to draw you into disrepute with the other canons of the judicial conduct.
Right. So you could say, hey, give me some money, but not give me some money because that guy sucks, because that's one of the rules that you can't do.
Yes. So
Okay.
it's a very narrowly tailored exception. It still feels a bit unsavory when I've,
I mean, to be fair,
gone
though,
through. I don't want to ask for money.
you should be top of the list of understanding the legal parts of things.
Yeah.
And so if it's more complicated legally, if I'm running for commission and I have a big complicated legal thing in front of me, I'm in trouble. Where a big complicated legal thing in front of you, you're more likely to be able to understand it. So anyway, yeah, because I get that's one of the things I talked about with Dino a lot. It's like the ethics rules that judges have that are different, and how that affects campaigning, because you can't say the other person sucks.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. I go back and forth on whether I think that's appropriate in the system or not. I'm okay. Generally speaking, I'm okay with the phrase if you're coming with and this is why I'm better, which you can do that part. You don't have to say they suck. You just say, this is why I would be good at the job. And it's the reasons can't be because they're not good.
Yeah. I mean, that's always, when I decided that I was going to run for office and run for judge, I wasn't doing it because I want to run against a person. I am running for an office, not against somebody. I want to run on my merit and my experience and what I think I bring to the bench, and not as a disparaging of the other side. And I understand there are situations, and particularly in things that aren't judicial races, where they really do want to draw attention to what the opponent's
Right.
done.
Which
and
is a
things like
second
that.
level of stuff that you're not allowed to do anyway, because you can't be like, the incumbent did this thing that one time, which was
Exactly.
terrible, because you can't talk about them and then that way, and you can't talk about a specific. I can't ask you
Yeah.
how you would rule if X happened.
All
I mean,
of
I
that's
can
true.
ask it. I can ask it all I want, but you're not. But by the rules,
but
you
I'll
can't
decline.
Answer. Right.
I'll decline to answer. And frankly, for my purposes, I wouldn't want to be in the kind of race where we're slinging mud anyway.
Right.
I prefer to say I want you to vote for me rather than vote against a person. Again, there's situations where people need to draw attention to what the other side is doing, but there are also situations where, like, let's talk about us running for an office. Let's
Right.
talk about what we're bringing to the table instead of just, forget it, that other guy sucks.
Right. And so, and as you
let's
mentioned,
be adults here.
Right. You're bringing lots of experience from both sides of the bar. Is that like the technical term for the courtroom? Like where
Yes.
where it's usually like the aisle?
Yes.
Where
It's literally the divider.
between. But okay.
There's a short wall between the
I thought it was
gallery,
the gallery, right.
the audience, and then in front of the bar is where the lawyers. And
But then in front of the
judges.
bar, when you say both sides, is left and right on. But both are in front of the bar.
Plaintiff, defendant,
Okay. But when you say
prosecution,
I-
defense.
I'm being super technical. It's not important. It's just it's funny terms. Like, again, like that's one of the things I make fun of myself a lot for, because especially with some of the more experienced people, like I had Massey on a couple years ago, and we were talking, and I can't remember what phrase she was throwing out, but it's a phrase that you hear all the time on the news, and you hear lawmakers talk about it all the time. I didn't know what the phrase was. Like, I've heard it, and I had a guess. I was like, just tell me what the actual phrase is. And so it's like, oh, okay. Now that you explain it, it makes total sense. And it's one of those things that Dino was really bad about. He couldn't help himself. He just gets into lawyer talk, and I don't understand that, not like most people do.
Same.
Right. And I get it, but I think that's one of the things that in a lot of the current formats, and I'll have to go watch some of these videos you were talking about that the Bar Association did, is you get talking and you're so used to communicating in the way that you communicate professionally that it just goes right over my head. And depending on who you're talking to, they're not going to stop you and be like, hold on. It's just like, because they understand it. I would assume the Bar Association in their interviews, you might have had a really good technical answer that used a bunch of legal words that I'm not going to get, but they didn't think about it because they're used to those terms too.
Yeah, because it was all interviews by other lawyers.
Right.
So,
This is lingo that you guys use every day where you're understanding each other, and other judges, or not other judges, but other lawyers watching will understand it. But the lay public who is supposed to vote for this is going to go, I didn't take Latin.
I do try to avoid the Latin.
But
I'm fluent in Appalachian.
good.
I'll try to keep the Latin out when I can.
In hindsight, I wish I had. I wish Latin should have been the language, as much as it's not used in the general public today. Latin should be like a forced language on kids. It's more common. I mean, it's just it's more common in history stuff that we have to deal with on the regular or legal stuff.
Well, I think it's interesting in the etymology. Where did the words come from? How did they develop? And so
Right.
many of that comes in. I don't know how kids today would react if we're like, we're gonna get you on Latin. But I don't have an opinion on that because I'm not on the school board.
Right. See, good
You're
lawyer.
welcome.
Good lawyer here, everybody. That is proper lawyer moves. That was great. I don't know. So we're early voting right now, which doesn't matter to you because you don't have a primary.
I still got to vote for myself though for
That's
the first
fine.
time ever, and that's really cool.
Yeah, but then you didn't get to vote for sure. Well, I guess you had to. See, that's one of the things that we were talking about the Class C misdemeanor earlier. It's one of the things I find really problematic about this election cycle, and it's not necessarily unique to this one, but just looking at the particulars of how this came out, you don't get to vote for sheriff.
No.
That's weird to me. Like, that's just, I guess to clarify, if anybody doesn't know, you're running as a Democrat, so you voted for yourself, which means you had to pick up a Democratic primary. Also, legally speaking, you had to pick up a Democratic primary, or you're committing a misdemeanor in whatever it's called. And so I find that particularly problematic. If you're in District 7 for almost everything, well, District 7 commission, you have nothing. Or if you're a Democrat in District 7, you have nothing to do except for mayor in a primary. And I find that unfortunate, and we can lay blame, and I'll yell at Matt Shears and tell him it's his fault all day long. And he admitted it. He's like, I failed. I should have had more people. And it's like, well, whatever. But I find it problematic that if, like, for me personally, I will be picking up a Republican primary because I think I can get away with it legally. But like, I think of myself as more of an independent-minded voter. I don't want to stick myself in said category. And if I was a more true independent, I shouldn't pick up that primary. Then I don't get to vote for sheriff. You're
I
a
think that's
Democrat.
frustrating for a lot of people.
You're a Democrat and you don't get to vote for sheriff. And it's like, okay, yes, I can get behind the idea of, yes, Democrats, you should have put a sheriff up. You guys suck for not doing that. And that's one thing. But at the end of the day, and then it's a crime if I want to vote for sheriff as a Democrat because we didn't put a candidate up. But again, for me, it's like I'm not either. I'm not really part of either party. I don't really care about either party per se. I care about getting the proper people in the proper position to do the best for my county. And so, being stuck in positions I've had a hell of a time trying to get Helsley lined up for her interview. I had Mr. Givens on, and I still got to reach out to the other Democratic mayor candidate. And it's like I wouldn't mind helping choose who runs against Jacobs. I would like somebody that's going to actually put some pressure on Jacobs and maybe push some things around and help the politics move forward locally. But I want to vote for sheriff, and so I'm stuck. And it's really it's frustrating to me, and I don't know what the fix is per se, other than I luckily I suppose have the voting record that I think I can get away with pulling a Republican primary without actually getting said Class C misdemeanor. Maybe.
I'm not going to give any legal advice on the program.
I tried, everybody.
I think that's a frustrating thing for a lot of people, myself included, that if you pick up one primary, so many races in Knox County are decided at the primary.
I mean, we already have a problem enough with, we have only 2 of 8. How many judges total? 16?
16.
We have 16 judges total, and only 2 are actually taking time to vote for.
Yes.
And so on top of already having plenty of unopposed races that we don't get a choice, we just get the one person who's willing to do the job, Sherry Witt, among the list, and then on top of that, getting either further refined by not having any independent or Democratic challengers, so that the primary does the job.
So I'm a firm believer that reasonable minds can differ, and so I would love to see contested races. Not just because, again, that person sucks or something like that, but like you just said, to challenge people, because I think when we have more opinions and more ideas come to the table, hopefully we can distill the best ones that help everybody. If there's just one party, and it doesn't matter what label you put on the party, if you just have one and you don't have a proper outlet for dissent,
Right.
A proper outlet for people to pressure or critique or present their ideas, then I think a lot is lost. A lot of what could be progress for people, where we're going to disagree on some things. I mean, we have different parties for reasons. There are positions where lean this way or lean that way, but reasonable minds can differ, and if we can have a good outlet and conversations about those things, we can find common ground on that too. And so it's
Right, I mean,
Again, it's frustrating when you want to pick the best people
I mean, I don't,
for each race.
right.
And
I don't like the parties
you're
period.
limited.
Like I really don't like the parties period. I like some of the people that I've met that are in the parties and stuff like that. I like Matt Shears. I like Daniel Herrera. I'm weird, but I think the problem to me is that, you know, I don't know, of a list of 10 things that the Democrats have a position on, how many people actually hit all 10?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, well, yeah, I hit 8 of 10, and that's better than the 3 of 10 that I hit on the Republican version of the inverse or something. But there's issues. There's issues that I'm not on board with, and there's issues that I am. And like, there could be people out there that are closer or get more points in my little scale system I put together, but they don't get to play because they're not part of the parties.
Yeah.
And we could say independents get to play, but everybody knows that's a lie. Though I'm excited about Dominique Oakley in number 7 because I think she's got 7 in school board lockdown. I hope she does at least, because I think she's the best candidate of that threesome, and she's running as independent because she thinks it's stupid that school board races are partisan anyway. I think she'd be a Democrat technically if she had to pick a team, but she won't say that. But again, I think there's a problem. I think there's a problem we have here, and I don't know why we're talking about this because it has nothing to do with your candidacy. So let's back up.
That's okay. We could talk general politics. It's easier when you have a judicial candidate who can't take a position on other candidates or on
Fair enough.
on issues. We can just talk about politics in general.
I like I said, I think this is like right now, especially with this primary setup. I think we have I think it's a huge disservice to us, the public, on how this is shaking down. And it's a huge disservice both on Matt Shears' part. We're not getting somebody to run against them. But at the end of the day, you know, like the District 10 commission race, you have what partisan elections like this do to me, or what I see out of these kind of things, is that it encourages the further outs of the wings. And so it's I'm the more Republican of the Republicans in a Republican primary. I'm the more Democratic of the Democrats in the Democratic primary. And that's just going to push out the available candidates that make it to general. And so those what could have been 2 kind of center right, center left candidates going head to head, we now have 2 far right and far left. And so then it's a wider gap. It's more mudslinging. It's more contentious because they're so much farther apart ideologically. Where we could have had 2 candidates that were more in the middle, they're probably more likely to be better for the community as a whole because they're a compromised candidate. they're a compromised candidate by ideology, not by some force of will.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that logic. I think that's something that's probably trickled down from the national level, the way the primaries are designed. And it's just kind of come down to local races where it used to not really matter as much. You're talking about voting for a neighbor,
right,
and how the president, whatever their policy was, whoever was in the White House,
right,
wasn't affecting your day-to-day. This person that you know they live in your neighborhood, and,
right, which I think
and what label they put.
Right, and I think that puts you in a particularly a weakened spot a little bit just because you have the D after your name. And like Biden or not, he's not generally popular right now in national polling. And since you have a D near your name, people are going to associate you with the President of the United States, which has 0 to do with what you do and what your job is. But
True.
That's the way the party system works. I think I think it's terrible. I think it's a disservice. Again, I think it's a disservice to me. And I say me. I always have to clarify this because people get mad at me being selfish. It's like I say me as in a person in the general public, not me as an individual. Me as the grand we that have to deal with this game in front of us. I think it's a problem. I think, you know, like the reason I know who Pelosi is a problem by itself, but Pelosi impacts you, not because of any Democratic points that matter or the pillars of the party or any of that stuff, because realistically I don't know how much partisanship matters for judge job anyway.
Honestly, it shouldn't.
Right.
I mean, in Knox County, the judges are required to declare a party. In some other counties in the state, they don't do that. Truthfully, I've practiced in front of Democrat judges. I've practiced in front of Republican judges. If you took an average person in there, they're not going to know the difference between whether it's a Democrat or Republican judge. If you take someone who has a political science degree and has their fingers on the pulse of the politics in that community, they're not going to be able to tell because the judiciary, the idea of that is to be impartial. They are supposed to take what the facts are of the case that they've heard in court,
right,
what evidence that is presented to them, and apply the law to that, you know, whether they like the law or not. And so you're not going to walk in and say, oh, yeah, that's a Democrat judge in general sessions. That's a Republican judge in general sessions. They're never asking the parties involved what it is.
That's what I'm saying. Like that,
it should just it should be nonpartisan. Nevertheless, here we are.
Right.
So onward and upward.
So many shoulds in the world right now, I guess. Because again, like I think that's unfortunate because I think again, people don't know what the job is. People don't know how to differentiate a candidate when making a selection for the job. and they get to use the national media of the letters that go behind names as, I would say, probably as much in this position as any other. They use that D or R as their main reference in what they're voting on. And it doesn't apply at all, especially to this one.
Yeah, and I think people, your average voter, I think, generally means well, but so often, especially in local races, what the party is a crutch when you don't know. When it's going to be a very long ballot come August.
Yeah.
And when you have all these candidates running for positions you don't necessarily know a lot about, and candidates you don't know a lot about, that's the crutch. If I don't know anything else, I'm going to go on a letter. So that's a challenge, I think, for every candidate. Say, here's who I am, here's what I'm about, and I want you to look beyond a letter. That's one spoke in the wheel,
Right.
so to speak, of the factors you should consider on this, especially in local races, because Nancy Pelosi has never called me. Don't anticipate that she will for my insight on anything going on in Congress. And to my knowledge, she's never contacted anybody in Knox County about how general sessions should run.
I think she has the COVID right now, right? I heard she had the COVID currently.
I think that's true.
I mean, if she survives, then I think I'm going to go full on tinfoil hat. If she's like 3,000 years old and this thing was supposed to kill old people, if she somehow survives this, I think I'm gonna go full conspiracy theory for the rest of my COVID talk from now on.
I will leave all of that to public health experts as well.
See, but I got to talk. That's what I got to do. But okay, so let's do the 5 questions because I remember them. I have 5 questions I'm asking everybody on the way out as my version of the bar association's kind of slimline version of it, and we already discussed a lot of it, but we'll go in the shortened version of it. And if it expands into other conversations, so be it. So number 1, as we already talked about, is this your first time seeking office? And is this the beginning of a career in politics, or is this just here because it's here?
This is my first time running in office. And again, I decided to run on what was an open position at the time, and the opportunity presented itself. So going in full steam ahead, and we'll see what happens in August and what happens after August, whether that leads to other political positions or other campaigns. We'll just see where that road goes. But certainly I was running because I saw a position that I believe I would be good at, I believe I'm qualified for, and the opportunity was there. So those opportunities don't come all the time, and timing seemed right with where I was career-wise and my experience. So decided to go ahead and jump in the deep end.
Check. All right. So 2 is, what's your favorite place to eat here locally?
We could do a whole other podcast on that.
This is really this is an excuse for me to find some places I haven't tried yet. So just give me like your most obscure one that you can think of if there's a long list.
Most obscure one.
I mean, favorite's the question, but
I mean, I don't know that I eat anywhere obscure. My husband and I don't cook a lot, so we go out to eat a lot. Neighborhood-wise, we go to Aubrey's a lot. Downtown, I'm a big fan of the bistro. Pizza, South Coast, Hard Knocks.
All right, fine, enough. We can't go through the whole list. All right.
Again, I could do neighborhoods. I could do genres.
Right. Whose office am I going to make a phone call from or something today that picks which restaurant and gets up on the list? All right. So 3 is, what's your favorite ice cream?
Favorite ice cream? It's going to be the Kroger brand. I think it's like Private Selection or something. But brown butter bourbon.
Brown butter bourbon ice cream.
Brown butter bourbon.
All right, I got to go grocery shopping later. I'll have to look at that one. If they have it in the small one, I'll have to give it a try.
Oh, they do. They have it in the pints. Pistachio honey and raspberry chocolate chip are also.
All right, you said pistachio as a positive, so all your opinions on ice cream are out the window. All right, so 4 is, I think, again, we already talked about it. I think 4 is, do you feel like partisanship helps me, the voter, in any way, shape, or form in your race?
No, definitely not locally. I think at some point, theoretically, and possibly when you look at national parties, you have people you don't have access to. You're not going to be talking to presidential candidates generally, or have opportunities to.
Yeah, but they're not supposed to be the big one that does everything anyway. But anyway,
no,
sorry.
But that was, you have a platform nationally for candidates that you don't have access to. Locally, you're voting for what are essentially neighbors. And so you have that access. And so party doesn't necessarily need to be that crutch when you don't have access to somebody. You can find me out at any number of restaurants, conversations.
Right. Obviously, just go hang out at a restaurant.
yeah.
She'll be there eventually. Anyone, just pick one.
Either at the courthouse or somewhere there. And again, and that's true for all these races. You
Right.
see the people who are running out. And so party doesn't give that information and accountability that it does when you don't have access locally. Again, these should be conversations we're having as opposed to just a label that we use.
Right. Okay. Then 5 is I just blanked out on it. Dang it! I just had it too. I was thinking about it. I had it. 5 is you're a Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me about a Republican that you like.
Well, let's see. I like a lot of Republicans. Like I said, reasonable minds can differ. My husband, chief among them, I tend to like him pretty well.
So clarify the question. I'm sorry. I forgot. I'm talking to a lawyer. An elected Republican that you like.
I haven't had particular issues directly with anybody. I worked with Sharm, of course, for years, and got along fine. Again, I had to resign the position, but that's not anything where we have animosity from that. All of the
She had
judges,
to fire her husband, so it's not like she's.
yeah, that would be trouble. Every judge that I practice in front of currently is a Republican, and like and respect.
All right, fair enough.
So-
Fair enough. I'm good with that. All right, so while you were doing question 1, I reminded me of something I did want to ask you, and maybe it was a typo, and I might be making a bigger deal than it is. When one of the versions of the petitions came out, you were on two different judge things. Like
That's what I started talking about with the petition or with the county commission appointment. When I said that Judd Davis, someone who had been a coworker of mine,
Right.
got the appointment. Either way, if I was running against him, I had to resign. And so that's where my initial petition that I picked up was. But if I had to run against an incumbent anyway, frankly, I went for the one who has not been a colleague of mine. Judd and I had offices right next to each other. We've been more friendly with each other, and that's not to say that I have any animosity toward the current office holder in Division 1, but it's just a different dynamic
Right,
when
I
you've
get it.
been the hierarchy of judge and attorney versus coworkers.
Right, I understand. I understand completely. Like,
So yes, now I'm running for Division 1.
because I remember seeing that, thinking, can you do that? Can you petition? Like, and so it was correct me if I'm wrong here. My assumption is that you'd already turned the petition in, or you already pulled the petition, and that goes on record no matter what. And since you didn't turn it back in, it just kind of disappears.
Yes, so you
And
can,
so you can
you can
only-
pick up as many petitions as you want. You can only turn in one for the office.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That makes perfect sense when you think about it that way. I get it. Like it's. I'm curious about the process.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of want somebody to challenge my primary just to see the process. I don't want the Class C misdemeanor on my record, but I just kind of want to see. Chris Davis will be really mad at me because I already told him I might do it. But
Well, Class C's, not legal advice, but Class C misdemeanors are expungible without having to use your judicial diversion.
okay, I'm gonna pretend like I know what any of that meant. I know what expungement meant, but I don't know what a judicial diversion is. What's that mean?
A judicial diversion is when you plead guilty to an offense and you have a period where that punishment is, or that judgment entry is diverted, usually for the period of time that sentence would be.
So that's a
At the-
complicated way of saying probation.
and at the but at the conclusion of it, if you haven't had any, say, probation violation, then that case can be dismissed and then expunged from your record. So it doesn't go down as a conviction.
What kind of time period do I have for that?
Well, for a misdemeanor, you have 11 months and 29 days. For a misdemeanors, you can do a judicial diversion and get it off
but
your
a
record,
C
but you
you
only get
can't.
to use it once.
Oh, okay.
Well, for B's and C's, you don't have to use diversion. For any felony that is divertible, you would have to use your diversion. For any misdemeanor that's divertible,
Just
you
get
have to
one
use
ever.
diversion.
Man, what an interesting
DUI is not divertible. There are a number of felonies
little thing there.
that aren't, but
Huh. Okay. I was just thinking if I timed it right, I could just use my diversion over and over again, but I can only use it once, so that is
you can only use it once. So that is
but
not
it's expungable and
not
and,
the plan.
right. See, but I could see that being problematic to get in front of a Republican judge who sees me pulling a Republican primary and getting angry about it. I could see me getting a bigger fine than average. Like any fine's probably bigger than average because I'm like you said, I doubt this has been pushed at any level.
Yeah, I haven't seen it done, but the fine would be limited on what the Class C
What the-
misdemeanor
what
fine
the
would be. So
statute
$50 max, unless there's a special fine listed on that statute.
I'm gonna have to get a GoFundMe
and I'm not aware
going.
of that.
All right, I'll start a GoFundMe. Everybody give me $1 so that I can pay this fine if I get in trouble for it.
Again, I'm not advising you to do that. I
I get it. It is a again, I don't think with the way the challenge system works, as I understand it, I don't think it would stick anyway, because it's as Chris Davis explained to me that it would have to be there's a three election commissioner panel that would have to come see me, and one of them has to be the other party, so it'd be 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat would come look at it, and as we're well taught, they're not going to agree, so it's going to be a 2-1 vote one way or the other, and so my primary will likely be fine, theoretically. But anyway, I don't know. We'll see. I'll call you if you're still practicing private. I'll call you about that when I need you. If we're still at that point. Are you taking new cases, or you stop taking cases right now for your private practice?
Oh no, I'm taking cases.
Okay, so yeah, we're good. See, it's then you'll give me legal advice, but that's I got to get that retainer going and stuff like that. All right, so I don't know. The floor is yours. A couple minutes. Go through your plugs, your website, your Facebook, whatever. People can get in touch with you through anything you want to get out real quick, and then we'll do an outro.
All right. Well, again, Sarah Keith for Judge. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as Sarah Keith for Judge. I have a website, electsarahkeith.com, and you can email me if you want to get in touch, asking questions via email, or I can give you a call back, and that email is electsarahkeith@gmail.com. Again, I'm running because I think I have the right experience to do it. I've dealt with very difficult cases and made the decisions to go forward with prosecution or to defend a client, even if it was difficult, and made the decisions to dismiss even if it was difficult, because I believe that that's what the facts and ethics and the law required that I do. So even when the decisions were hard, I've always tried to do what the law required among those decisions, and I think I would take that perspective to the bench. In addition to the cases I've taken to trial and advised and reviewed, I've done more search warrants than I can count, reviewing those for law enforcement. You get a call at 3 a.m. About some serious case going on, and they need a search warrant, and reviewing that to determine if it's proper legal procedure done on that. So again, that's another time where you're looking at public safety. If they're calling, at all hours of the night, it's a case that feels very important to them and may be someone in imminent danger, where they're trying to get information.
I thought they didn't need a warrant if it's an imminent danger. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
There are cases where where prosecution wants them to call before they make an arrest, and there are cases where they need to know whether they need to do a warrant or not, because there's hot pursuit. There are rules where they can go in. There are exceptions to warrant requirements, but generally,
right,
they do want to call and make sure that they are doing something proper on that. Sometimes it is so apparent that they don't. But again, I've had cases where they call at 3 a.m. With the child missing, and they're wondering, how can we get access to see if we can ping a phone, or if we can get information to go into this person's house. And that's, again, another situation where you have something that's very emotionally charged, but we also have to follow constitutional protections on that. And so I've reviewed those and assisted law enforcement officer with that. So again, having to do these tough decisions and put my personal belief and personal emotions aside and decide what's best under the law. And that's a perspective that I think I could take to the bench in Knox County. Again, I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, or whatever. I think that you treat people like people. Everyone who comes into the courtroom deserves to be treated respectfully, and that's whether they're accused of a crime or whether they're the highest priced attorney in Knox County, whether they're a victim that's scared to be there, or whether they're someone accused and they're representing themselves and are scared to be there. The most important case on the docket to every one of those people is their own, and they deserve to be treated respectfully and professionally, no matter what that case is. Again, whether it's a murder, or whether it's a theft, or they've been in a car wreck and have a civil suit going on for that. It's the most important thing to them, and they deserve to have their case heard fairly, impartially, and professionally, and to be treated respectfully. And that's what I want to do. I want to run the dockets as efficiently as possible, but in such a way that we also give the time to each case to get it right, because I think that's important to everyone. And that's, again, what I would strive to do. Take the experience I have and the mindset that I have to serve the people. That's the reason they're in court. Like I said, that's the reason we have people voting for judges, is there has to be some accountability. And Sessions Court is the one that's in the trenches and has the most impact with people. And so that's what I want to do, is be a servant of the people in that position.
All right, cool. All right, so Sarah Keith, everybody, the only sessions judge that you actually get to vote for, or the only one that's a contested race at least. So you will see her name on the August ballot when you go to vote. So anything else?
For sure. That'll get vote for Sarah Keith. Thank you.
All right, that's the show, everybody. All right, Sarah Keith, like you said, General Sessions judge, the one that's actually contested. You'll see it on the ballot, that kind of thing. Appreciate her coming out. It was a good time. I learned things, and then I got fully mush brain there for a little bit. But that's what I do. Almost an Agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our website, almostanagreement.com. I'll have a link to her website as well as a link to this show on the section in our Voter Guide 22. And then links to KGIS, links to Election Commission, and then links to all the other interviews I've had and a bunch of other people's websites and stuff like that. So you can see who's running where and what they're running for, and then learn a little bit more about each of the actual people, regardless of their party affiliation, since that's been a big chunk of this show. Check out our friends' Compass podcast, the Compass Points podcast. It's on all the major podcast providers as well as YouTube. And go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe to their actual paper there. They're the best of the best as far as getting real professional quality interviews, not like I do. Anyway, Almost Agreement at gmail.com. Go to your favorite web provider and subscribe to us there as well. Give us a 5-star review, rating, tell your friends about us, that kind of stuff. We're going to keep working through it as we get more candidates, because we got a whole state level thing that's just getting kicked off now too. So anyway, Almost Agreement, everybody. Thank you.